Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest with the Lead Chairs of Christ, and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the Star Christ Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 280 and we're covering Presbyterium Ordinance 8 on the Brotherhood of the Priesthood. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about the union between bishops and priests and how it's important and relies on that mutual respect. Today, we're continuing with Chapter 2, the Ministry of Priests, Section 2, Priest Relationship with Others, and now we're going to talk about priest relationship with each other, that kind of unity of the priesthood. And the summary is there's a sacramental brotherhood of the priesthood from ordination, but this brotherhood is also practical. So there are 3 subparagraphs today. A and B are very long. C is kind of short. A is about there's unity of the priesthood from ordination. B, priests need to work towards unity among ourselves in practical daily life. C, helping out priests in difficulties. So let's begin with A. As I noted, A and B are kind of long subparagraphs, so just be prepared. A, priests, by virtue of the ordination of the priesthood, are united among themselves in an intimate sacramental brotherhood. In individual dioceses, priests form one priesthood under their own bishop. Even though priests are assigned to different duties, nevertheless they carry out one priestly ministry for men. All priests are sent as co-workers in the same apostolate, whether they engage in parochial or extra-parochial ministry. This is true whether they devote their efforts to scientific research or teaching, whether they're by manual labor they share in the lot of the workers themselves, if there is need of this and competent authority approves, or finally whether they fill some other apostolic task or labor for the apostolate. All indeed are united in the building up of the body of Christ, which especially in our times requires manifold duties and new methods. It is very important that all priests, whether diocesan or religious, help one another always to be fellow workers in the truth. Each one, therefore, is united in special bonds of apostolic charity, ministry, and brotherhood, while the other members of this priesthood, with the other members of this priesthood. This has been manifest from ancient times in the liturgy, when priests present at the ordination are invited to impose hands together with the ordaining bishop on the new candidate, and with the united hearts celebrate the sacred Eucharist. Each and every priest, therefore, is united with his fellow priests in a bond of charity, prayer, and total cooperation. In this manner, they manifest that unity which Christ willed, namely that his own be perfected in one, so that the world may know that the Son was sent by the Father. So there are a few terms here I just want to clarify for help here. Parochial just means based on the parish, so parochial is the parish, extra-parochial is outside of it. There was a movement of having worker priests around this time. In the end, it was not seen as particularly helpful and the best use of ministry and things at the time and such, so it's not really common right now, but it was something and it's not intrinsically wrong to do. And obviously we as priests do help out somewhat. I'm perfectly happy helping out, to fix up something around the house or things like that. But I'm not going to go and work full time out in a factory or something like that. It's just not the best use of all the training that I've been given in the church and things like that. So those kind of points. But moving on here, the main point is that there's this brotherhood through the sacrament of orders. This is something that is hard to explain, but you feel it as something real. It's something that's not just kind of, I feel a brotherhood with all Christians, but there's a stronger brotherhood between all priests. And by this, we build bonds of charity. We build up the charity. We strengthen ourselves in those regards. And it's interesting here, it talks about how there's a single shared ministry. So myself, who's teaching in the seminary, and the priest in the parish, and the priest in the high school, and the priest who's in the chancery office, and the priest who's assigned to a retreat center, and the priest who does spiritual direction, and all those priests, we all have a single ministry of bringing people to God, building up the body of Christ. Now, obviously, each of us are going to have different things we might be doing, but the important thing is who we are as priests is first, and that is the first ministry, being a priest. And then the specific actions we are assigned as priests are those second things that vary a lot, but the nature of being a priest is common. And we are sent into the world. God the Father sent his Son, and the Son sends his apostles, sends the bishops, sends us as priests to go and bring Jesus to the world, to go and bring the world to Jesus. Those are what we do as priests. We're not priests just for niceties. No, we're priests to connect the world and Jesus together so that we can all go together towards heaven and the resurrection. So let's continue. 8b. Priests need to work towards unity amongst ourselves in the practical daily life. So the first one was on this kind of theory aspect. Now we're going to work on a little more practical points for 8b. Let's read it. B. Older priests, therefore, should receive younger priests as true brothers and help them in their first undertakings and priestly duties. The older ones should likewise endeavor to understand the mentality of younger priests, even though it be different from their own, and follow their projects with goodwill. By the same token, young priests should respect the age and experience of their seniors. They should seek their advice and willingly cooperate with them in everything that pertains to the care of souls. In a fraternal spirit, priests should extend hospitality, cultivate kindness, and share their goods in common. They should be particularly solicitous for the sick, the afflicted, those overburdened with work, the lonely, those exiled from their homeland, and those who suffer persecution. They should gladly and joyfully gather together for recreation, remembering Christ's invitation to the way apostles, come aside to a desert place and rest a while. Mark 6. And further, in order that priests may find mutual assistance in the development of their spiritual and intellectual life, they should be able to cooperate more effectively in the ministry and be safe from the dangers of loneliness that may arise. It is necessary that some kind of common life or some sharing of common life be encouraged among priests. This, however, can take many forms according to the different personal and pastoral needs, such as living together where this is possible, or having a common table at least at frequent and periodic meetings. One should hold also in high regard and eagerly promote those associations which, having been recognized by competent ecclesiastical authority, encourage priestly holiness in the ministry by the use of appropriate and duly approved rule of life, and by fraternal aid, intending thus to do service to the whole order of priests. So, hopefully this is a pretty clear paragraph. It's a little long, but the basic idea is that we need to have that charity to all priests. We need to have that union in practical ways. It starts off with this idea of age, that younger ones should learn from older ones should respect younger ones. Now I'm kind of in the middle. I've been a priest now for 11 and a half years as I'm recording this. And I'm not like a brand new priest, but I'm still not nearly as experienced and things like that. And so that's important to know. And it's that sharing of goods, that sharing there, that we share our goods and we help the priests who are struggling, who have overburdened, who are lonely, who have too much work and things like that. And we take care of them. And then we're talking about recreation, relaxing together. It's good when we see Dawson priests who are like, hey, we the four of us went on vacation together or things like that. I remember I was visiting a parish last year. Was going to baptize a baby there. I don't remember. I was baptizing the baby either just before or just after the Sunday Mass. But I went to Sunday Mass and I went to concelebrate because I was just visiting as a priest. And 5 other priests who were taking vacation together, 15 minutes away out in a cabin or something, all came to concelebrate because they were having vacation together. And that's a good idea. They were all classmates. They were in different dioceses, but they'd gone to seminary together and they'd done vacation together every few years, right? Or every year, I'm not sure. And that's a good thing. And it's also good that we see priests who are like, they're fans of the same team and they watch the games together, things like that. Even those kind of things like that, it helps build that community fraternity. And we need to help each other spiritually. It's interesting here, it talks about the good of living together, and this is mainly for diocesan priests. We religious priests, it's pretty much automatic unless there's an exceptional circumstance. But diocesan priests, how much they live together. And obviously, certain things are going to be different in different places. Sometimes just they meet once a week for a meal or something. But it's worth thinking about whether, rather than having one rectory for every parish in a city, we have a few bigger rectories and there's the priests of 3 parishes together or things like that. So they can have that common life. And then it talks finally about associations which help priests in community and in holiness. There's sometimes things like third orders. It can be a third order Dominican or third order Carmelite as a diocesan priest. But also there are specific ones that also encourage diocesan priests to live in community, things like that. And they set specific prayer things because we as religious, we have a very extensive list of prayers we're supposed to say every day. Diocesan priest has Mass, breviary, and then you're supposed to pray a bunch more, but the church doesn't set exactly what prayers they can do. And these help them with a spirituality that will set a certain set of prayers for them. So hopefully that's helpful. Now moving on to our last subparagraph, C, is helping out priests in difficulties, because priests are going to have difficulties, different types. Some are going to have apostolic difficulties where things don't work out. Some are going to have vocational difficulties where they're tempted with a woman, or they're just frustrated and bored, or things like that. Or they have things where they themselves are making bad choices that can cause difficulties for their vocation. So let's read it. C. Finally, by reason of the same community in the priesthood, priests should realize they are obliged in a special manner towards those priests who labor under certain difficulties. They should give them timely help and also, if necessary, admonish them discreetly. Moreover, they should always treat with fraternal charity and magnanimity those who have failed in some manners, offer urgent prayers to God for them, and continually show themselves as true brothers and friends. So this is fairly straightforward. We need to help them out, but we also it's not easy to admonish them, especially if they're making those bad decisions that are leading down that path to those difficulties. And we need to have charity in doing that all. Because we have this brotherhood, we need to propose charity. And sometimes priests have difficulties. They'll have a moment where they'll go through a spiritual difficulty, or they'll have a moment where the apostolate doesn't work out. I know priests who've been in tough situations where they're the ones who has to be there when the parish is closing or when the parish is merging. And it's a lot of stress, and we need to have special care for those priests. And it's not their fault that the parish is closing or the parish is merging. There's a whole bunch of decisions going in historically, and it's not just the one who's been there the last 3 years when the bishop decides, hey, we got to reduce it and eliminate this parish. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. I do this podcast on a volunteer basis, and my own local religious community relies on donations to pay our bills. If you want to support my community, or the Seminary of the Legionaries of Christ, which is where I live, you can go to my Patreon, patreon.com/frmatthewlc. There's also a donation link for that and a one-time donation on my own website, frmatthewlc.com. And if you want to support StarQuest, who's producing this podcast, you can go to sqpn.com/give. Tomorrow, we will continue with the next paragraph of Presbyterian Ordinance 9 on priests are for Jesus first, not our own ends. One of the things I've noticed about Presbyterian Ordinance is the paragraphs tend to be longer, so there's very few where we have very few days we have multiple paragraphs. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. You can go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan. Amen.